So at Clearway, which is a website where people try to find lawyers, we often have executives ask us if they've harassed someone, and let's say they've actually harassed someone at their company, and now they're being threatened that the person's going to go to the media and the person's going to file a harassment lawsuit, what should they actually do in this scenario where they've actually done the act that they're being accused of?
Okay. Well, that's a unfortunately somewhat common thing nowadays, unfortunately. There's always two sides to every story, but as an executive, the courts, so fundamentally, let's just start from where the courts start. The courts start from an employer it's not a balanced relationship between an employer and an employee. So they take, and that makes sense, right? Because the employer's paying you, they tell you when to show up, they tell you what to do, the employee kind of has to do their job. So an executive, by the nature of the position, is a person of authority in an employer. So first of all, it's not necessarily he said, she said, or she said, he said, or he said, he said. The executive has a higher standard, has to adhere to that higher standard, and for the most part, the organization has to respond to that accusation.
Right.
What the best thing to do is, in the first instance, is hire a third party that's unbiased.
Okay.
Now that could be another lawyer, that could be a workplace investigator, but it should be someone, because look, if you're an executive, let's say you're executive of Google or you're just a huge company, you can't hire a person that's 3 levels down from you to investigate something you did.
Sure,
Right?
right.
Of course, they're going to be in fear of their job, so they're not going to give you a real response. And in fact, the other person might be scared of speaking to someone that's under you. If you're an executive, they'd be like, well, of course you're going to tell them everything, and of course, so.
They might be scared of talking to a lawyer as well.
Yes, well, you as the executive, so I guess you say as an executive. The executive is an employee in that instance, but what I'm actually answering is the employer
Right.
that has had a complaint. And the executive themselves, first of all, they should take that situation very seriously. Whatever's being accused of, they should separate themselves
Sure.
from immediately,
Right.
so it can't continue, or be accused of being can't continue. And then they should either go higher up and say, hey, look, this has been had. Things probably, to be safe in my mind, everything should start being recorded. So whether it's emails, keep those emails. If it's just because recorded takes away a third party or a judge or an arbitrator having to interpret what happened. What did you say to this person? What did you say to that person? Okay, well, here's the recording. Here's the email, right? So there's no interpretation issue. So that's, I would suggest, the first thing that happens. But really, you should have, in my opinion, you should get a third party, like I said, either investigator. There's a lot of ex-police officers now are investigators. There's private investigators. They're all licensed. There's workplace investigators. That's a very common thing right now. There are lawyers, and lawyers are good to have that if they're not involved. They can't be it should be the employer's lawyer,
Right.
And they shouldn't be the employee's lawyer. Like, they should be no bias. But if they're not involved, they understand the rules. They understand the law, which is so. What I think a lot of employers don't understand is how serious this can be. How the law is very, very focused on protecting the employee, whether it's a human rights law, employment standards law, just contractual law. So to answer your question, the first thing they do is get a third party to come in, give that person or party or organization effectively carte blanche to investigate. Don't direct them, don't tell them, if you've hired someone good to do this, they'll know what they're doing, and then they'll advise you. You should, like I said, if you are the head of an organization and someone below you's been accused, get that person out of there immediately.
Really, just fire them?
No, get them out of that space.
Oh, okay.
So don't fire them. Don't fire anybody.
Like
don't,
work from home?
Just don't have those two people working in the same
Okay.
office so they see each other the next day.
Right.
Right? Because until you've figured it out. So what I often advise is, work from home is great. That was not always so common. It's very
Right.
common now. Great solution. For a couple days. The other thing is, maybe that person that's being accused goes home, gets paid, but just separate that situation. Don't let it to inflame. You don't want the person being accused to go and try and fix it. That's probably the worst thing that can
Right.
happen.
Yeah.
And the person that's accusing, this is very serious to them. And the other thing is, the reason why a third party is because you might have a relationship, like a business relationship and a friendly relationship, or just like 10 years you've worked together with one of those two people. That's going to make you biased. You shouldn't be involved with it at all.
Right.
So,
What should the person that's actually being accused do? Because now they're, let's say that they're a little bit lower down, they're like a middle manager or something like that, and now they're stuck in between their company that's trying to cover their own tracks basically, and the person who's, accusing.
Well,
what should they do? Should they hire a lawyer?
See, it's a difficult question, and it's very fact specific. If it's a sexual nature or sexual touching, 100% hire a lawyer.
Okay.
100%. Too serious, too intense, and too much potential for very serious ramifications.
Right.
That's my advice.
Right.
And also you could ask that person, because if a lawyer's good that you've hired, they'll tell you, because sometimes I was reading something the other day where a gentleman, and this was 5 years ago, slapped a woman on the leg. And everybody there at that time thought that was acceptable. And a lawyer is clearly going to tell you that's not acceptable.
Right.
And so if your attitude is this person's being difficult and the complainant, you need that to be corrected instantly.
Right.
Because if you start acting like you're the victim, or you're just going to get yourself in worse trouble. So if it's a minor thing, I would probably go to my supervisor and say, hey, this is what I've been accused of. I'm not really clear on what's happened. Honestly, if you're accused of something minor or not minor, don't start making statements. It's too quick, it's too soon. Like, get your head around what happened.
Right.
Not to change it. It is what it is. Like, you want to be honest and accurate. But, there could be some emotion, there could be some fear, there could be some anger. How dare that person, blah, 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 who knows?